Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wrist Cheese Radio Podcast, episode 118 to be exact, in your home for the horological hot takes, taboo topics, and often unpopular watch opinions. I'm your host, Brodinky. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mr. Schmidt. Schmidt, what's up, bud?
Not a whole lot, man. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm starting to get a normal sleep cycle back, getting the energy flowing a little bit more. Getting rid of that dogged, tired feeling all the time. So starting to get back in the swing of things here. 2 weeks in a row now. That's as we call it, a streak, referencing Major League, one of my favorite movies. He's like, we won two in a row. We can call that a streak. So yeah, just looking forward to recording another episode here tonight. Anything good going on in your neck of the woods?
Oh, man, just on the road traveling again. Got some family vacation coming up, so that should be fun. Taking the kiddos around the country, doing some fun stuff with family, so that should be a good time. We'll see how it goes traveling with two little kids under the age of 5, so that'll be interesting. This will be their first long road trip type thing, so pray for me. Please pray for me.
Will do. I bet the listeners would like to know, what are you bringing with you?
Ah, I
I
haven't
don't know if you've
thought
even thought about it, but I
I
mean,
haven't thought that far ahead.
I'll tell you what I would think off the top of my head. But if you have an idea, you can go ahead.
I'm probably gonna take my Aquaterra, my Terracotta, and I'll probably take my Speedy so I can time the drive.
All right. See, it's funny. I was gonna say Ploprol.
Really?
Yeah, kind of. No, all business. Don't have to worry about nothing.
I mean, that's
The
true.
tank.
You don't. You don't.
So that was where I was going with that one. But
I like it though. I like where your head's at. Maybe I'll just
yeah,
take three. Maybe I'll just take three. I
yeah.
don't
Why
care.
not?
It's
Right.
fine.
That's why they make
Whatever.
watch rolls and stuff.
Yeah, that is true. And we are supposed to be going to a water park, so
That was my
maybe that's
other. Because I know you said you were heading up to the North Country a little bit. So there's always some fun lakes, rivers, waterfalls. Not obviously a watch like an Aqua Terra is just fine for that. But I don't know if you want to take the Terracotta in a stream full of rocks yet.
yeah. We're not going to that kind of water place,
Okay,
but
all right.
it'll be like a normal water park, um but yeah, I'm excited. We'll see how the kiddos do, but should be a good time.
Yeah, for sure. And finally, the freaking summer weather is here. Like I was, it was a cold spring. I was waiting on it, and it was kind of like bumming me out. I'm a July baby. I like hot weather. Like I don't even mind sweating. Obviously, my profession lends to that too. I don't even mind being stupidly hot, but I really don't like being cold. And so thankfully the warm weather's here. Break out the rubber watch straps, break out the divers. I'm hyped. This is like prime watch season for me, you know.
Yeah, so like why do you live where you live?
This is where I was planted as a seed, as a
As
sapling.
a as a C.
I was watered and raised here, and that's why I'm here.
Okay.
And
I
now
was
at
gonna
this point,
say,
it's just familiar at this point.
yeah. You're just comfortable. It's fine. I
Right.
get
Yeah.
it.
It's a
I get it.
comfortable relationship. That's all.
I was gonna say, because bro, you are living in the exact opposite place that you need to be if you don't like the cold.
Oh, no doubt. 100%. 100%. And all I know, I just have friends that are just slowly on the exodus. One of my good friends is moving to Vegas. He's under the same impression.
Oh,
He's like, dude, it's nice out there. It's decently affordable. We like to gamble. I'm like, yeah, I know. I don't know how good
hey,
that is with 3 kids, but all right.
hey, I've always told you you could always come join me where I'm at, and
That's
I think you
right.
would have a great time.
Probably would.
It's plenty hot where I'm from. So not Vegas hot, but it's plenty hot.
Yeah. And you know what? I like barbecue. I like Mexican food. Could work out just fine.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Just food for thought.
Uh,
You just gotta convince wifey that you need to make an entire life decision and change.
just pick it all up. Pick
Just,
it all.
just pack it all up and put it in the box and let's go.
I'll tell her, I'll tell her we got to move the pod like Rogan did. Got out of LA, moved to
We'll just,
Texas. Be
we'll
like,
just move it out and out.
got to go buy my own ranch and, do that Do the podcast thing. Sure. All right.
We're big enough. It's fine.
Sorry guys, I'm gonna have to start running ads if that's the case. All right.
Might have to. Might have
Yeah,
to.
for sure. AG1. You know, what's that, right? That memory supplement that I hear on every single
Oh
podcast.
my
Get your
gosh. Yes.
AG1. Yeah, now it comes out. I think I heard that might be like a fraud. I guess I'm not surprised. But anyways, back to the task at hand here. We got some cool drops this week. We've had some fun discussions over the week about some certain things that we're going to share later too. So I guess let's kick it off with a watch that's sort of the hot topic, and it's first of all, let's get it out there that it is a concept watch.
Yeah.
It's not a production watch, at least yet. And who else would IWC throw it on other than Mr. Hamilton appropriately? And we were talking off air. And I think part of this is social media's fault because I know I certainly don't keep up a ton with F1, and I think you probably do a little more than I. But I think everybody
That's stretching it, but yeah, sure.
everybody was under the impression Lewis Hamilton's moving to Ferrari. But social media will show, because of how things work, they already have pictures of him with his head doctored on the Ferrari outfit, right? Whatever you want to call that thing.
Yeah.
Now he's not moving over there for years, or at least a year, I should say.
Yeah, a year. Yeah, 2025 is the official
so he's
start with Ferrari.
So that's why you and I were both a little confused when you see the picture of him riding a scooter, which is kind of funny, but he's still wearing the Mercedes getup. And you also wonder kind of what his situation with IWC is going to, how that's going to play out, I guess.
Yeah.
But either way, he's still there for a little bit. And so they're still banging the old Petronas drum. This time they're giving you a fully loomed ceramic watch. And it's pretty cool. I got to hand it to them. It's a neat party trick.
Yeah. I mean, when I saw this watch, I immediately had the back scroll. It's one of those ones that like instantly catches your attention. You're like, hold on.
It looks fake at first.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say that. I guess you could say that.
At first, looking at it, I thought it was a render. I thought it was like a fan art.
Like one of those April Fool's fan arts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, totally. I could totally see that. But it's cool, man. It's as we mentioned, concept watch. So at least as of right now, according to all the articles, nothing is indicating that this will go into full production. But my belief is if they have the capability to do this already in this particular configuration, there's no reason that they couldn't make a more accessible version of this for production. Because my biggest thing here is I didn't see anywhere where there was a cost associated with this.
Yeah.
At least not where I can see. And that's typically because concept pieces are extremely expensive to manufacture. They're usually one-offs. So there's a lot of R&D and cost that goes into developing something like this and being the first to do it. So I'm imagining that it's probably way more expensive to do something like this than would be production viable at this point. Now, is that to say that, a couple years down the road, IWC doesn't make this a full production watch? I think people are asking for that to be the case. I certainly am, because I think it's really, really cool tech. So just to kind of give you a breakdown, IWC was able to take Superluminova powder, create a new process to put the powder in a more fine way so that it can be bonded or essentially with ceramic powder to create the mixture.
Okay.
This was difficult because technically ceramic powders and Superluminova powders have different grit, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to say a grain. Yeah.
Yeah, the particles are different sizes. So because of that, it made it much more complex than just, shoving loom into the ceramic.
Sure.
But certainly possible. Omega has done this with combining liquid ceramic and Superluminova for like bezel scales. So It's certainly a possible process. It's just nobody has really done a full ceramic case out of it, which I will give kudos to IWC being the first for this. It's pretty freaking cool.
Now the comments on these were pretty good. First of all, some people were commenting that it was 50,000. I don't know where they saw that number. I didn't see a number on that.
I didn't either.
That seemed to be the consensus among, rando commenters. The other thing is, any issues with the pushers and crown not being ceramic?
Well, I'll tell you this, it's very complex to make those types of components ceramic, especially when they have to be movable. Like in the case of the way that IWC does its pushers, there's like it's a two-stage pusher almost. Like you have the
Right.
top part that actuates back and forth, and then
Yep.
you have kind of the collar for it. So most brands, IWC included, will manufacture their pushers, their crowns, and things out of traditional titanium or steel or some type of alternate material, just because it is too difficult to produce those types of intricate geometric shapes in ceramic. Now, brands have done it, Omega being one of them.
Yep.
All of their push buttons and crowns and things for things like Dark Side of the Moon,
That's what I was
Blue
thinking of.
Side, whatever, those are ceramics. So it is probably possible. It's just IWC doesn't typically do it.
Yeah. Now I saw a what I guess was a wrist shot of this. It was kind of a sloppy, definitely a phone pick. Didn't look great, not loomed, right? Because big pet peeve of mine is not being able to read your watch. Totally pisses me off, and this did not look good in that regard.
Yeah,
So,
it's
um,
I
I,
mean, think of it this way. It's the color of an indice, right? Like it's the color of a marker. It's
no, no doubt.
white,
And now
right?
I'm willing to give it a pass until you can see one in person because again, it was a cell phone pick and lighting, et cetera, et cetera. Now the press photos and stuff are quite nice and very detailed and look really good. But I'm
Yeah.
just if that I would hate to for you know probably somebody at like Red Bar in New York or something would probably have one of these and I would stumble across it and then be like, oh man, I can't wait to see this. And then you're like, it's cool, but I would like to be able to read it. I don't know. Again,
Yeah.
I we
Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
talked about this a lot, and I think we agree it's maybe not necessarily the goal of all people in the hobby to be able to use and read your watch, but it is mine, and I want to be able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the watches should be functional ultimately, right? They should be able to tell you the
Especially
time.
chronograph. Come on.
It's the whole purpose. But no, I'm excited to see how this works out in IWC's favor long term, especially because it is so stealthy and cool. And like you said, it's a neat party trick, right? It's one of those things you could
Super
wear
neat.
every day out in the sun, and as soon as you send into a dark room, like you are the focus, automatic. And IWC claims that this glows for a very, very, very long time. And I imagine that that's given to just how much lume material is actually placed inside the case. Obviously, with Superluminova, the more compound you have, the more prevalent you are for a brighter and longer lasting glow. So it's pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, no doubt a sweet party trick. Certainly a flex in a nightclub. I'm not so sure about a movie theater. You might get thrown out for that one, given the the bright glow that it looks like it emits. But I would be down to try it out.
Yeah, for sure. I would love to see one. That's for sure.
But good for them. Everybody always says IWC is kind of a one trick pony. I mean, we've seen a little variation over the past couple of years of some neat things. They've gotten a little bit away from the just straight up black dials over the years. So something different, something more playful, something ties into their. I mean, I don't want to say they have racing heritage because they don't, but their racing affiliation,
Yeah.
gets away from their. Even though
I
this is
mean,
technically a pilot's chronograph, it still kind of gets them away from the we. This is our history. We're a German pilot brand.
yeah, and I was gonna say, fundamentally, even though this is with Lewis Hamilton, he's the one to debut this at the the Grand Prix in Monaco. Um, at the end of the day, it's a pilot watch, and pilot watches need to be luminous, right? Like you
That is
need to be
true.
able to read them in low light conditions. So this is kind of the normal function of a pilot's watch taken to the nth degree, right? Like this is the ultimate concept, if you will.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. All right, let's move it along to what we haven't heard from Oris in a hot second. They've put out a few things this past week. They gave
Are you
us
sure?
just a touch, just a touch.
Just a touch, just a touch.
Yeah, so they gave us a couple of very brightly colored Aquas models that they were calling the watermelon. And if you couldn't have guessed. It's a reddish pink dial and a green dial. They got
Immediately forgettable for me.
yeah. I mean, they are somewhat of a playful brand, and I chalked it up to kind of that they do sort of do these playful things once in a while, sort of like Zodiac does a little bit. Just kind of a fun release. Um, yeah, it's probably not a go for me, but
Yeah, definitely not a no, definitely not a go for me either. I mean,
it's yeah.
I think the idea of the watermelon watch is cool, but you got to do it in the way that someone like Zodiac did, right? Like that fun combination of colors together in a GMT style timepiece. Like that was a really cool watermelon. Then you had kind of the diver version as well. So like that was more watermelony than these two pieces are to me.
Agreed.
Like, and the thing that's hard for me to think about is unless you are seeing these watches side by side, you don't get the watermelon connection
Yes,
at all.
also very true.
At all. Like alone, one's just a green dial watch and one's just a red dial watch. That's all I see.
Yeah. Yeah. You always say you could put it on the case back. You could always stick a watermelon on there.
Oh my God. What was it
Uh,
that we were talking about putting on the case backs? It was the oyster, right? That they had an oyster shell
oh yeah, wait, hold on. What did somebody say?
and it looked like a potato chip.
Potato chip. That was the one. Kaz said it looks like a freaking potato chip, and now I can never unsee.
I know, me either. I will say this though, before we get into the next Oris piece. Um, Oris, can you please, for the love of God, fix your website? It does not work at all. It is so hard to navigate. It is so confusing. You click on things and they don't take you anywhere, even though they're clickable. Like it just doesn't make any sense. So
I'm gonna
please
go out
do
on a limb
better.
here. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I think watch companies at this point are just trolling us with their websites. They all stink. Like every watch website I go to that is a brand website is borderline unusable.
I don't get it, man. I really don't get it. Like I'm clicking links and I can't even pull up watches, and I'm like, how is this? How is this real life? I don't understand. Like I'm clicking on the photos of the watermelons and they don't generate. Like can't find it. Just launched it like 2 weeks ago. Where is it? Anyway, what are you gonna do?
Next one up though, pretty cool. I like it. I think this is a little more up my personal alley. So they dropped a 40 millimeter Diver 65 in black DLC. It's a limited edition. I think it's to celebrate. I believe they're 120 years.
Yeah,
Is that
120 years.
right?
It's the 24 was it
Holstein. Yep.
Holstein edition. Nice looking watch, man.
250 pieces.
I like it. I think it's cool. The biggest fatal flaw, of course, is going to be the lume. But if you're buying a watch like this, that's not really the point.
Right. You would think so.
It's just kind of a cool novelty piece to have. So I like it. 4,200, 40 millimeter case. It is DLC plated. So just be mindful. DLC coating is not impervious to scratching.
Right.
Much better than PVD, but certainly not impossible. And it's funny. Did you notice the case back?
I did.
Okay. No potato chip
Nope.
oyster, but we have a bear with sunglasses and swimming trunks.
Hey, he's in a bathing suit.
He's in a bathing suit. I like it. It's kind of fun.
No, it's neat. It's playful. Only 250 pieces. I'm a Diver 65 guy personally. From
Yes.
their lineup. I really like the way this watch looks. I wish they would do more things with the 65. I really liked when they did the cotton candies and the bronzes, all of that stuff. I wish they would just keep it rolling. I know it's probably kind of plain Jane for a lot of people. It's sort of your standard run of the mill diver, but
Yeah.
I really like it. I like the proportions. I like the way that they've laid it out, and to me, it's just a really nice design. And now that they have the 5-day movement in this one, so
I just,
keep going.
selfishly,
Everything seems like it's Aquas. I would like to see more Diver 65.
selfishly for me, I'm with you. Selfishly, I wish they would go back to the original Diver 65 dials.
Oh, the old
That
school
was
one.
Yeah,
Yeah,
with the funky numbers,
that
like
is gangster. It's
that
like the
was my
boxed in
favorite.
number. Yeah,
Yeah, that was my
that
favorite. That's the
Art
one I
Deco.
have.
Yeah,
So when I have, it's just cool. It's funky. It was very like that's the one that really like turned me on to Oris because, and I think for a lot of people because it was just so unorthodox for the time, and even still now it's unorthodox, but it just looks so good. And this new kind of like pseudo circle rectangle markers version of the Diver 65, I'm just not super fan of. I wish it would go back to the original one and improve it, like make better loom, things like that, and really knock it out of the park because I think that they could. And I think people want that kind of funky, weird stuff right now. We'll talk about that later. But right now, the Oris is just too plain Jane for me as it currently sits.
and while we're at it, give me more Big Crown. I like the Big Crown. I haven't seen the Big Crown. It feels like in forever. I want more Big Crown.
It's true, man.
You
That's
know,
true.
it's like it's for me the Big Crown was always like sort of like a Swiss version of like the Alpinist from Seiko. Just a really neat watch, cathedral hands,
Hmm.
versatile, kind of adventure-y, really cool. And I always thought it looked really great, especially when they did it in the different metals. They had bronze, I always thought the dials were really great. They had sort of like the Bordeaux color, they had a teal one, they had a mint green, they had so much variation. And maybe this is just because that was closer to when I really broke into the hobby and started collecting and looking at things. And I was like, oh,
Yeah,
these are
yeah.
really cool. So maybe I'm just very keen on that stuff because of that. Like they say like when you the music that you hear in like your formative years, like your like let's say like senior in high school, college years
Yeah,
will
yeah,
be your
yeah.
favorite music of all time just because of the time of your life that it was in.
Yes.
And I feel like it's
Makes
probably the
sense.
same thing going on there, but I like the Big Crown. Bring it back. I know it didn't go anywhere, but just bring it. Give me more. I want it. I want it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you, man. I'm with you.
All right. Let's keep it tracking. Tag Heuer back in the news. Not only do they have really good ambassadors, they now have a chronometer professional diver thrown in the mix here.
Mm.
Yep. So they've got it's now 300. It's 300-meter chronometer certified. I think these look really good, and they also have GMTs as well. If this is your thing, so the Aqua Racer
Yeah.
is back, and it's I guess better than ever. If you'd say now, we're gonna have to say they definitely took a page out of the Rolex book a little bit here, right, with this green and black situation.
No,
Just
not
a
at
hair,
all.
just a hair. But you know what? I like the wave
Not at
dials.
all.
I like the wave dials. I don't know. Everybody seems to hate the Cyclops at 6. I don't know if it bothers me a lot.
It doesn't. It doesn't bother me at all.
It doesn't really bother me a ton, but I've heard a lot of people hate it. The color schemes are pretty good, but you know what? It's a nice welcomed refresh. And again, these are the things that Tag is doing right and that they should keep doing.
Yeah.
And then they go out
No,
and put up some weird stuff. But this is good.
I mean, look, arguably, I like this watch a lot. I think it's certainly necessary for the market to have something like this at this price point and look good. The only thing that's personally throwing me, and this is just my opinion, don't take it at face value if you like the watch. For some reason, the shape of the hour hand, it does not visually, it's throwing off my OCD. There's something that's incongruent about the shape of the hour hand, which I know they're trying to replicate the Hoyer shield, the Tag Hoyer shield,
Yeah.
on the hour hand. But it's just it to me, it looks like it's supposed to be rounded, but it's supposed to be angular at the same time, and it does not work for me. I kind of preferred the design of the most recent hand, which is more of like the broadsword
Oh yeah.
style
Yep.
hand that they did last year, or the year before. This one, with the kind of shield logo incorporated, it doesn't feel like it's at the right angles to me. But that's my only gripe. I like the watch. I think it's cool. The colorways are great. The wave dials are nice. Comes on rubber strap. They improve the buckle options. So they now have a
That's
sliding
right.
micro adjustment system.
Yep.
So it's much more improved at 3,600 bucks, which is great. Especially if you're looking for like an entry level luxury diving piece. This is a perfect watch. I like the sky blue on kind of like the grayish anthracite dial.
Looks good.
Looks good. Um, I think overall it's just a nice watch. Ceramic bezel, all the good stuff. Now chronometer certified, which it should have always been, but that's just me. But for some reason, it's just that hand that is knocking me. Now, again, I haven't seen this in person, so it could totally floor me when I see it in person at some point. But right now, it's just kind of throwing me a little bit for a loop.
You know, and I gotta say, 3600. I mean, granted, that's date on rubber. Bracelet is 3800, but this sort of used to be like Tudor territory, and now that they're completely
Yeah,
out of that. So
yeah,
like
it's crazy, right?
having some stuff here, I think this is well positioned, and I think this is going to go against the likes of like, but even your Oris is now moving up out of there. Now that they have their
Yeah,
proprietary movements and things like that. So I think Tag is making a pretty wise decision because they're still associated with luxury, right? We know who owns them, and people will see that branding power and say, well, 3600 and it's got the bells and whistles, right? It's not like it's not like sometimes like and I remember when I got into the hobby, sometimes you'd see a watch that was priced what you'd be like, oh, that's a little lower than I thought it would be. And you'd
yeah,
realize, oh, well, it's the quartz model. All right, well, I wanted the automatic, so I'm not going to get this one. But like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but in this case, it has all the bells and whistles. You can get a really nice piece. There's no real drawbacks here. You're like, why not? So I think they did a very smart thing coming in sort of just under that new, I don't know what you want to call it, that new floor of the luxury divers that we've come to love that are now getting sort of priced
Hmm.
out of this range.
Yeah,
So, but I think it's good. I think it's good for them. I mean, even the GMT 4000 on rubber, 4200 GMT on bracelet, really not bad.
yeah. The only other thing too that I have as a gripe is with the Aqua Racer line, they just change it too quickly.
They do. You're right about that.
I mean, yeah, we've had three different hand style changes in the last, what, 3 years,
Yep.
4 years? So that's another gripe of mine. It's just like whatever you come out with new is immediately dated because you release something right after it. So Tag, please, if you're listening, which I know you're not, but if you were, just let it run for a little bit. Let it run for a little bit longer and let us focus on that. Make it a buying piece. You don't have to come up and reinvent it every single 2 years to keep it viable. It'll be on its own. You got to give people the ability to want it.
Yeah. Establish a run, right?
You
Like
got
when
to,
you when
man. I
you
mean,
think
look,
about those golden ages in certain watches where you're like, oh man, this production line was so good. I'm so mad I should have hopped on it when I knew it was good, and then they changed it, and now, the older one's more expensive.
yep,
That's what
yep.
makes it good.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I just think that, if they keep this design for a little bit, start working this design into other pieces or, within that range, and maybe you just start discontinuing everything else behind it, that's fine, or in front of it, that's fine. But, you know, make this one your run. Like give it a fair shake and a fair chance to be successful as it ages.
Yeah, definitely. Maybe switch up some colorways and stuff, but aside from that, let's let the model have its moment, right?
100%.
Yeah, I think so.
100%. 100%.
I think so. All right, let's keep moving here. So AP put out some stuff this week. I know we don't usually talk a ton about AP, but it's going to be pretty relevant to our discussion here. AP put out a variety of things. They put out some really small Royal Oaks. They put out some Royal Oaks that have some very interesting patterns on them, and then they put out a remaster, which is just sort of all the way off the reservation. But I think the small Royal Oaks are sort of just sign of the times where the industry
The
is as
trends are
far
going,
as
yeah.
yeah, the trends are going, the influences are pulling it and such. We'll talk more about that later. Um, the camouflage Royal Oaks, I mean, kind of neat from a material standpoint. Um, I don't know if I love them. They're cool. I mean, they're cool that they could make this. And if nobody's seen it, I mean, you were telling me before I saw the colors. I didn't know if they were just playing around with metal or not, but you said it's gem sets.
Yeah, so there was like some gem set camo pieces that
Yeah, I did. I saw them. I didn't know exactly how they made them. I really didn't pay much attention. I just saw them and I was like, cool. Obviously, like way out of the realm of possibilities, and at this point, don't even care. But still cool.
Well, I mean, and I'll say this, man. I'm not a huge AP fan, but I certainly like the direction that they're heading in. That's a bold statement for me to say. I'm not a huge AP fan, really at all, because I mean, I have no desire to own one. I think they're cool, but their movements for me are not overly impressive. They're not very accurate movements from what I've heard from a lot of collectors, because it's not really about the accuracy of the movement. It's more about the complexity or the finish work, which I totally understand. But this kind of more fashion approach. Remember, we had the CEO change last year.
Yep.
So this more fashion approach, this more gearing towards feminine pieces and smaller cases and things like that, I think is pretty interesting. It's cool. I mean, we have a 23 millimeter Royal Oak. I mean, that's crazy. I
Yeah.
mean, looking at their website, some of the new pieces, I mean, there was 34 millimeter frosted gold pieces that were released. We have this gem set camouflage. And the one that really knocked my socks off was the tri-metal camouflage.
Yeah, that was the one I was looking at. Was the
I
metallic?
mean, that is just utterly insane to me. And I'm thinking about this from a manufacturing complexity standpoint. Okay. You're taking three different types of material and combining them together. Okay. Keep in mind, theoretically, all of these golds could have different hardnesses. They could become malleable at different
Right. I was going
temperatures.
to say melting points because once they get
W-
mixed, it's different compound.
Correct, man. And to be able to make them together without messing them up or combining them accidentally is got to be an engineering masterpiece because that is not an easy thing to do, and then to do it in the way that's articulated into the dial because it like bleeds the
Yep.
camouflage into the dial is insane to me. And that's the other question. Are each of these inherently unique
I was wondering that
because
too.
of the manufacturing process? Are they all going to be slightly different?
Yeah, you wonder if the artistry would be a little too much to keep consistent.
I mean, realistically, how could you?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you're combining three different metals into one metal or one singular item and also a bracelet, and you're doing the most amazing tri-metal I've ever seen. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool to me.
Yeah, I mean, not that I see a lot of tri-metal, but certainly a feat. And at least we're seeing them push the boundaries a little bit. I think everybody got tired of seeing the code 1159 in every which configuration possible. I think we've seen plenty of the Royal Oak with just a different dial color or just in a different metal dial color combination. It's something a little bit different. It's an engineering feat or whatever you want to call it, metallurgy feat. It's neat. It's artistry. So it's nice. It's a
It's
nice thing. Again,
it's
are any of us probably going to pick one up? No, but it's fun to
no,
fun to look at.
yeah. I mean, it's completely unrealistic for me to own, right? I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I don't make that kind of money. Um, but the fact that they're able to create this type of like gold camouflage and do this is truly truly inspiring. It's very cool. It's a unique blending of things. I cannot wait to see this on Ed Sheeran. I'm sure I'm sure he's gonna have the first one, but it's cool to see it, and I like the direction that they're going because this is true innovation. It's true watchmaking craft. Like again, people see this type of photo and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's cool, that's fun." Like, no, man, this is super difficult to do.
Yeah, it's not painted.
It's not painted. This is like alloyed together, and it just blows my mind that they can keep it separated and still keep it definitive to what color is what. It's crazy.
That's good though. It at least lets you know that the people over at AP are just trying to be design forward, trying to be creative, not just like, all right, well, let's mill it in and make another. Here's another Royal Oak. Let's put
I
it
mean, because
in.
because let's be honest, that's kind of how it felt. for
It
me
did.
for
I
a
mean,
long time.
I'll put it this way: in a recent article, it was even acknowledged that somebody that they were basically known as the Royal Oak brand
I
for
mean,
just making
100%.
different combinations, different flavors of Royal Oak. And yeah, this is one of those, but this is just a little bit of a cut above what we've been seeing.
I mean, way above. And I can definitely see the female influence of leadership into what we know as modern day AP. Period. Because let's be honest, the previous CEO was kind of going off the rails when we saw the Black Panther and the Spider-Man and all this weird association that didn't make any sense, especially given the price point of those pieces. You know, it didn't make sense to me at all. Something like this, and again, not that I'm a gem set watch guy, but like the camouflaged gem set white gold AP Royal Oaks with like this technical blue camouflage and this technical woodland camouflage is just insane to me because it's so striking. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so that's going to take us into our last one here. And it's very, very different from what they've been doing, and even very different from the watch that this sort of shoots off from. So people might not remember they made a watch called the Remaster '01,
Yep.
and it was inspired by an old chronograph. It was 500 pieces, and it was kind of came and went. It was supposed to be just another line added along with the 1159, something else from the Royal Oak. And it's kind of just gone by the wayside. Again, it wasn't very big, but now they're making something called the Remaster '02. And this one is sort of very off the reservation. And again, I think you're seeing sort of the fashion influence on this one. It's got a very odd case shape, kind of
Yep.
reminiscent of that watch we talked about last week with the really weird sort of window
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
aperture to it. Yeah, I don't even know how you describe this case, but it's very angular, and even the crystal is angled,
Yep.
and it's dressy, and it's still got some AP vibes to it. If you look at the crown, right? So I mean, it's again something different, something neat. It's absurdly expensive, but it's definitely into
And
the
and and a new gold material,
yes.
the sand gold.
Not forget that, but it's a 41 mil watch, 9.7 thick in sand gold, and I mean, it's cool. It's probably kind of plain for some people. It's not exactly as out there as AP has been, and certainly not as gaudy. And it's only 250 pieces, and it comes in at $47,000. But maybe somebody out there who's in this market doesn't want the AP that everybody else is after. So maybe this is for them. But it definitely gives me, given its sort of angular, compressed looking cape shape and stuff, I could definitely see this being sort of what you were talking about, where you're seeing that sort of fashion forward, maybe some female influence here. Let's offer something different. Let's offer something not Royal Oak.
Yeah.
Still kind of reads like an AP, but it's definitely not what people know us for.
Yeah, 100%. And from what everyone says is like this is a watch that's inspired from the heritage, right? Apparently it's a tribute to a specific type of design called brutalism, where it's very angular, it's very harsh lines, it's asymmetrical in many ways. So it's basically taking all of the normal conventions of design and brutalizing them into something that's completely different, which is what we get here, right? It's a very interesting watch, very well finished, beautiful. I love the new gold color, the sand gold. It's like this almost tan colored gold, which is very muted. But it's interesting when I look at this watch. I know it's a tribute to the previous version. I like the previous version better. If that
That's
makes any
interesting.
sense. It just looks more interesting to me than this one. This one's almost because of its size, it's almost too brutal, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's like I can understand like the asymmetry based on the original vintage version because it would have been a much smaller case,
Yes.
right? So this one, when I'm looking at it, because of its design and its shape, it lends itself with this type of K shape to being too big and too almost cumbersome on the wrist because I see it and it's almost like if I wore my Ploprof backwards, right? Like that
Yep.
whole crown section would be jutting into the back of my hand and it doesn't look comfortable. And everyone that I've seen wearing this watch on a wrist shot for press and things, you're seeing that crown start to dig into the back of their hand. I cannot imagine that this is a comfortable timepiece to wear unless you're wearing it on your right hand.
Some of the comments on this on the article for it are really funny. Somebody's like, "Oh, this will pair perfectly with the Cybertruck," and somebody goes, "Yeah, Cyber Oak."
The Cyber Oak. That's actually a good name for it.
It
I
is.
like
That's why
it.
I was like, all right, you
The
win,
Cyber Oak.
Cyber
I
Oak.
like it. I mean, because it totally does look like
I
like a
mean, it.
Cybertruck.
If you want to talk brutalism, Cybertruck is where it's at.
I mean, 100%, right? Like that's kind of the antithesis of that design concept, right? The thing that's trippy to me though is like when I look at the shots with like the case back removed and just the movement, like the case is unnecessarily large
It looks like it, right?
on the side that it doesn't need to be on. Like there's a picture, it's a cutaway of the case without the case back, and you see like several millimeters of just milled out gold space that could not necessarily be there because it doesn't serve a function. It doesn't protect the case. An absurdly long crown and stem to match the profile of the case itself, and it almost just looks like it's over the top,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I know it's designed to do that. I know it's supposed to be that way, but I think in this size, it wears too large. It's not going to be practical. But again, I mean, this is not a watch you buy to be practical. This is a watch you buy to say you own it.
This is a
Because
watch
what?
nobody buys.
No, so there's
I don't mean
these
nobody
watches are
wants to
already
buy it. I mean nobody can buy it.
well, I mean, these are watches that are already pre-sold, let's be
Yeah.
honest. We're just seeing the photos because they decided to announce them, but these watches are already gone. AP collectors all over the planet have already gobbled up what you said 250 pieces.
Yeah, yeah, they're
I mean, that's it. So these are already gone. They're going to high profile AP collectors all over the world, and the rest of us can just look at the photos on the internet.
yeah, that is the truth. But
So
in we send a lot of these pictures back and forth to each other throughout the week, sort of, and it sort of shapes the episode out, and that's sort of how we do this. But you don't have a ton of time to just sit around and have conference calls about, hey, what do you want to talk about this week? So that's sort of our creative process. But in the process of that, in sending back and forth these things, when we sent this one, you made an interesting comment, and that was we're heading back to the dark ages of the 60s and 70s. And I sat there and I was like, you're kind of right. And we've seen for a long time sort of the 60s designs, the tried and true 60s and 70s, a lot of popular designs, a lot of reissues, right? We've seen a ton of it, and it's been all the rage. Vintage has been really cool, bringing back collections or color combinations that were once really popular has trickled all the way down from Rolex to everybody else. But after seeing a watch like this, it got me thinking when you said that, is this where we are headed? Because we know things are cyclical. And yeah, there's certain things that never go out of style, right? Date just, date eight, whatever, never going to go out of style. Okay.
right.
But we saw how strong the steel sports craze was. And it
Yeah.
feels like it's trickled. It feels like it's tapered off a little bit, right? And now you have a lot of people pushing the sort of dress watch, the smaller, the more fashion forward watches. We're seeing a lot more precious metals. We're seeing a lot more of the artistry and sort of the fashion side of the industry showing through. I mean, we do know that some of these companies are owned by fashion conglomerates, so that sort of makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm wondering if you're right, if we're heading down this path now where the new cool is going to be, I don't want to call them ugly watches, but sort of just more separate from the mainstream that we've been used to over the past 5, 8, 10 years.
I'd say 10 years. I'd say 10 years. if not 15 years,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we know it was
Hyper masculine.
hyper masculine, stainless steel. We saw a little bit of a resurgence in two-tone. I still think we're kind of in that way, but to me, what this really looks like is the end of the 70s, right? We've transitioned away from the mid-century modern reissues, right? The classic golden era of timepieces, if you will.
Yeah.
We've moved into, the steel sports watches of the late, mid to late 70s, right? Your Royal Oaks, your Nautiluses, all those things that came out at that time. And now I think we're headed into this very like thin, ornate, angular, avant-garde type style that we saw very prevalent in the 80s, right? I mean, I think about watches like the Omega Constellation. I think about watches like, things that we saw from UG. These very like artistic representations of watches. It's like we had the golden era and everyone's like, okay, fashion and style is changing completely. How do we make our watches that are good fashionable to be in line with the times? And in doing so, you created an entirely new aesthetic that resonated with people, but to us now feels dated and
Yeah.
old. But I think we're heading into that. Okay. I mean, we've talked about this before, but I mean, I remember when a watch collector would never own a Cartier, right? Like that was a real thing. There would be like, who has a Cartier? Unless it was like a 1950s manual wine tank. Like, okay, that's cool, right? But it's like you went out and bought a $9,000, $10,000, $15,000 quartz Cartier because it's Cartier. I don't know. But now people are like, yeah, man, I'm getting a Santos. I'm like,
Seen
what?
it.
Like, really? Yeah, dude, the new emerald green dial is awesome. I'm like, uh, maybe for you, like for me, not even a remote passing thought. Like that's not the Cartier I would personally buy. But if you think about this in the 80s, who was big in the 80s?
Yep.
Cartier. Everyone was wearing ultra thin, gold plated or gold pieces. It was that type of style. And you're starting to see, I think, it make it come back. We're returning to this kind of, you know, juxtaposition of design. Everything's going smaller, trending smaller again. We're creating new pieces that are going to be in that same vein. You're starting to see these weird kind of artistic representations of time-telling devices
Yeah.
come out.
For certain.
I mean, it was funny because we talked about on the last episode, we talked about that unique watch that came out that was launched on the Houdinki website that sold out immediately, right? I cannot remember the name of it for the life of me because it was so irrelevant at that point. Cool design, but just a unique thing. And then when this Audemars came out, and I remember texting you about it, I was like, everything's just a facade. Like this is all
Yeah. I
primed.
said
Like
we
this
live
is
in
all
simulation.
we live in a simulation because it, the jokes are writing themselves. It's like we were talking about how this design is like coming out of nowhere, and all of a sudden, a major brand, some of which is considered within the holy trinity of watches, depending on the collector you're speaking to, make something like this. Now, obviously, it's not mainstream. It's a limited edition. It's going to be very, very highly sought after in small select groups of people. But the fact that a brand like AP did this is huge because that makes it acceptable for other brands to start getting onto this trend.
Yeah, for sure.
We're leaving the steel sports watch trend. We're leaving the two-tone trend. We're leaving the integrated bracelet trend. We're heading into the late 70s, early 80s design where everything just we're going to push the boundaries of what design can be. And we're revisiting the past. All these things are cyclical and it's so crazy when you grow up and people are like, "Yeah, man, styles come around and styles come in new trends and all these things." You're like, nobody's going to wear bell-bottom jeans again. And then all they do is they repackage it and they sell it to you as a new name.
Yep.
And all of a sudden you're like, this is it. It's the stuff. Like I saw a guy the other day wearing what I thought for a hot minute were Jenko
Oh,
jeans.
I saw those too. I was like, oh, tell me Jankos are back.
I'm like, is this real? This dude wearing parachute pants down the street in the middle of the afternoon, like you could deliver like a week's worth of water in those bad boys to a
Yeah.
small village.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's these are huge. And total confidence. Bucket hat, weird 90s sunglasses, and Jenko jeans. And I'm like, I thought I was in a music video. I thought I was in a social reenactment. I was like, what is
Limp
happening?
Biscuits playing in the back.
I mean, is Teenage Dirtbag on? Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand.
No, you're right though. And I mean, you can even tell by the direction that a lot of the media has gone, right? How much cover we have never seen so much coverage for Piaget, Cartier,
Ever,
all these
ever.
slimmy dress watches, Bulgari, you name it. We're getting it full frontal right now.
I mean, and that's a perfect example, right? Piaget, Bulgari. I mean, they're in the constant thinness wars every single year. I mean, and again, no shade. What they're able to do in terms
That's
of micromechanics and
that's
creating
wild.
complications in still mechanical form in as thin of a profile as they're able to create. I mean, this is insane. But imagine if you took those same concepts and you applied them to all of watchmaking in terms of design. Like that is big, you know? That is huge. So you're right. You know, these brands, I mean, 'cause, think of it this way. I mean, like, I know we talked about this on a previous episode, but like the King Midas, it was a joke. Not a single person wanted to collect the King Midas. It was like this
Till Riri
weird,
came out wearing one.
yeah. And all of a sudden, it became like the it watch to get. Came with a funky box and it had a funky design and it was very atypical of Rolex. Like I'm waiting for the day that the OG Cellinis start coming back in stock. People are just like rocking Cellinis. I'm
Yeah.
like, you know, it's weird. It's weird, but I think we're heading for it. We are heading for the dress watch era. We're heading for the thin competition era. We're heading for this ornate dress watch era that's coming. It's gonna be something. And the days of people clamoring in style to get big, bulky, heavy divers and things like that is probably going to be less prevalent. And I should say this, it's going to be less prevalent within the watch community. It's not necessarily going to be less prevalent with the masses at large, I think,
True. Yeah.
right? Your average everyday consumer who's not a watch
They're
enthusiast,
not being influenced by the same crowds.
no,
Yeah.
they know a Seamaster is good. They know a Submariner is good. They want to get, you know, uh, a
I was
Breitling,
gonna say they
whatever.
know the name Breitling, they know the name Tag Heuer.
Yeah, they're gonna go for those things. But your whisk community, you're heavily embedded in the weeds watch enthusiasts. These are the people that are going to be looking for those esoteric pieces because that's going to be the mainstay fashion statement now.
Yeah, I mean, look, if that means I can get some fancy, sweet new pie pan watches, I'm down for it. I've always wanted an old pie pan Connie, but I think a lot of those trends are very dated, and I don't know how that's gonna listen. They always do a wonderful job of repackaging, repurposing, and spitting out a new product that you're like, you know what, it kind of works. So I'm curious
Yeah,
to see how they do it and if I'll like it or not. But I think that is the direction we are heading by
yeah.
all means.
It's just rebranding it. Like I said, bell bottom jeans. I think they call them flared
I was gonna
jeans
say
now.
it's all flare now.
I'm like, it's a bell bottom jeans from the '70s. Like, let's be honest. But Gen Z and Gen Alpha have a great way of being sold the repackaged ideas,
Well,
right?
it's
Like
also because they really haven't seen it in the original
correct.
package.
And that's why they say that fashion trends always come back around because this younger generation feels that they're experiencing them for the first time,
Yep.
even though it's an older design idea, even though it's an older concept that has predated their existence. They think it's new even though it's old, right? So it's a very interesting mindset, but I think we're headed for it, and I think we're headed full steam.
Yeah, like I'm curious if we're gonna get recreations of I don't know if you're familiar with them, but like for example, like Seiko and Grand Seiko had a lot of very angular, dressy pieces, like the Lord
Yep,
Maddox,
yep, yep,
some of the
yep.
old Grand Seikos, and they're all numbered, referenced, and they're very long, but very cool looking watches.
Well, I
And they
mean, hell,
sort of
even some of
fit.
the King Seikos had those like
Yep,
those very angular
yep,
case designs.
and they sort of fit the like if you could put that next to this new AP, and you wouldn't say that they're similar, but you could see a connection. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Based on the
6 degrees of
right,
separation
based on
here.
the angles of the case, based on the shapes. Because even looking at that AP, it looks a lot like an old Seiko I have sitting around here somewhere. It's an old Lord Matic, but the angles around the lugs and everything on the sides of the case, they reminded me of it, and I was like, oh man, I was like, I wonder if this is coming back. So I'm very curious if we're going to see this be an industry wide thing, if we're going to get this from everybody in sort of their own flavor, their own way of bringing it back, or what. And then I also what I always go back to is I wonder sort of who are the people calling the shots on this, because we know that I mean let's face it, the biggest name in watch media is owned by a large fashion house,
Yep.
so it would be very easy for them to start dropping the propaganda out there, and it doesn't take much, right? It just
No,
once the fire
because
starts burning.
it's a simple Google search, right? And it's all predictive marketing. Is looking up dress watch 2024. It's probably going to pull up some type of Cartier. It's going to direct you to Hudiki's website. They're going to have a fashion style article, by Malika Crawford about how to style your GQ outfit with your Cartier tank, and you think that that's the watch, right? Like that. It's all predictive marketing.
Well, that, and then you have everybody else who's sort of in the industry. They're not dummies. They're going to hop on it too. You're going to have like the analog shifts of the world. They're going to say,
Yep.
look, we got all these vintage models in stock. Isn't this what you
100
want? Come get the real deal. Get the genuine
100%.
article, right?
Yeah,
I don't blame
100%.
him for that. That's just smart.
And these are all the guys that bought this stuff when it was inexpensive,
Right.
and now they're selling it for a lot more money than it's actually worth. But again, right, supply and demand, basic economics, right? I have a supply, you have a demand. Uh, Here we go. Let's do some business. 100% agree with you. It's a machine, man. And it's getting more elaborate and more crazy as the years go on, but it's very interesting to see how these things get really pushed into people and how it becomes the trend again. Because again, it's like I think about Cartier all the time, and when I first got into collecting,
It's really been a wild ride for their what I would say is their brand image.
yeah, I mean, for most watch people back in the day, it was not even a factor. It was not even a second thought. The Cartier watch that you bought it for your wife because that was the only person that actually cared. The true watch guy was buying a sub or GMT Master, or they were buying a Seamaster or Navitimer. Like those were the watches people were buying, Speedmasters. I mean, and still to this day, a large part of people buy these pieces.
Yeah,
But
it's tough to put this type of stuff out there and not seem like you're just completely disregarding that stuff. That is
yeah,
still a very prevalent part of this industry, but it's just the sort of the I don't know, flavor of the week, the talk of the town, whatever you want to call it. It's certainly gone this direction, and it's not just us. Listen, I obviously have a pretty wide range of a wide reach. I get a lot of DMs a week. I've had these conversations with people all the time, and sometimes
hmm
just
hmm
unprovoked. Sometimes it's just from chit chatting or them sending me a picture of something, or a link to a website. And I've had this conversation, and it's everybody's sort of in agreement on this one.
yeah. It's interesting, and I'm curious. If you guys are out there listening, I'm curious what you guys think. So DM us, talk to us about these things because I'm curious to see what you guys feel about it. What is the next trend that you're going to think is coming? What is the next thing that you think is down the pipe? And I'm curious to see kind of what your take is on this because bro and I have been kind of covering this for a minute. I really don't know of anybody else that has been covering it to the extent that we have. Um, but it seems like there's a cataclysmic shift, and we are moving away from certain things that we thought were the safe space for watches for years. And it's always funny You know, back when I was working in sales, I always used to see the guys came in, with their old Omegas in 36 millimeters, right? Like these old Seamaster divers in 36 millimeters. And I always used to be like, how do you wear a watch that small? Like, how did you get to that? Because visually, it looks small,
Yeah.
right? Like the dial aperture is so tiny, but these guys were convinced and still convinced that that was the right size. Like that was the biggest watch that they will ever own. Because anything else bigger than that is too cumbersome or
It's jumbo.
clunky.
Yeah.
It's huge. And I always would wonder, like, how did you get to that mindset? And now I'm seeing it happen in real time.
Yep.
And it's quite interesting to see it unfold that way.
Yeah. Now, who I think stands to, I don't want to say prosper. It's not the right word. But the people who sort of stick to their guns, what they like, as opposed to what's in the air, right? Those are the people, because you're going to be able to buy a lot of those watches now that used to be cool or used to be en vogue, and price is probably going to come down on them, especially secondhand, right? Like, if you, I'll put it this way: if you're like me, somebody who doesn't really care, like if I'm buying whatever Seiko's, right? I'm looking on forums first. I'm looking on Watch Recon. There's not a lot of things I buy new in that realm where I'm like, if a watch, if I have to buy it new, I'll buy it new. If it's important to me to buy it new, I'll buy it new. But I don't often do that. So
yeah.
But anybody who's down to try to buy stuff, like, listen, if you're still into like stuff like the tuna, that's going to be way out soon. So you might as well
100%.
gobble them up now, like we were talking about. Buy them when they're cheap, right? If that's your thing,
this is the time. Just wait a couple months, maybe a year, and start waiting for the masses and the trends to change, and that's when you start buying everything else that nobody wants. Everyone's going to start buying Santoses. Cool, great. You buy still sports watches, right? You buy two-tone pieces.
Stick to your guns. If that's what you like and you know yourself, stick with it. I mean, listen, I'm not saying tastes can't evolve and change, but I think at the end of the day, you know who you are. So if that's your thing, strike while the iron's hot, right? Take advantage of it.
100%. 100%. Could not agree more.
Yeah.
But let us know what you guys think. Let us know. I'm curious to know what your opinions are. I'm curious to know what your take is on this. And if you listen this far, thank you. But let us know. I'm really, really interested to hear what you guys have to say about it.
Yeah, for sure. Shoot us a little DM on the show page. Both of us have access, so one of us will answer. But
typically, bro. But yes, one of us will answer.
That's just because I'm on my phone a lot, too.
Yeah, you're chronically online.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm wheeling and dealing.
Go touch grass,
doing creative
bro.
stuff.
Go touch grass. Oh.
So, but anyways, all right. I think we can call this one. It's pretty late. I know you got some traveling to do. I could probably got to go do a bottle feeding soon. So.
Sounds good, man. Sounds
here.
Good.
Thanks everybody for listening. Hey, 2 weeks in a row. Who's better than us? No. We'll see you next week. That's right. That is right. And you know it. No. We'll see you next week. Everybody, thanks for listening. Have a good one. And definitely drop us a line. Ciao, as they say.
Take care.